text me or something like that. But I'm just going to go ahead and just get started for everyone. Okay, so hey, I'm assuming you can see my screen too. Hoping you can see my screen right now. My name is John Wolf. I'm from a studio that I run called Kaimon International. What I do is I make video games like everyone else probably is involved here in either making video games or into the service industry of games in some type of way. And I also do some Japanese translations as well as consultation and marketing for companies that are trying to break into the Japanese market. And companies that are Japanese companies that are trying to break into the international market as well. So kind of going back and forth. And so this talk today will be about, as it says right here, micro-level strategies for tapping into the Japanese game market. But first, the globalization track. And as the globalization track, maybe I can kind of talk about really what it's like to kind of work for a Japanese studio and work for a Japanese studio now, especially when I'm not actually in Japan at the moment. I think, so, okay, Santedia, I saw you just kind of came in 07, okay. Yeah, just let me know if you can see the screen, everything's okay, because, oh. Okay, cool. All right, so if you can see the screen and everything, then I'm just gonna keep on going. I already kind of gave a quick introduction, but I just wanted to be sure everything is okay. So how's everyone doing? Hello. And again, I'm John. One of the reasons why I'm actually participating in this event is because I came to know about Devs TV through Sentedi here in Finland. So actually a company I used to work for over in Japan actually participated over in Slush. So that was the first time I came to Finland. I got linked up with everyone who's involved in IGDA Finland, Vesa, and a whole lot of other people, and had a great time. So this is really cool for me to be an American who was living in Japan that all of a sudden ends up in Finland and got a really cool look at the video game culture from multiple nations. And so he asked me to participate, and I'm going to go ahead and just share kind of some of the expertise and knowledge that I have on the Japanese game industry. Oh, sweet. We can see your camera and hear you loud and clear. All right. Screen is black, by the way. Okay, that's something we cannot have. So let's try this again. What about now? Can you see it? Can't do this presentation without without an actual presentation. You can look at me all you want and hear me, but if you can't see it, that might get a little weird. Oh. Okay, thank you, Daniel. Yeah, that's your screen. Right. So why can I see your screen but not like... Oh, I see. Technical difficulties. Oh, okay. Let's try this. How about now? Really? It's weird. There's so many options I can do for my window. What if I disabled my camera and then we just have blackness here? Now there's no camera, but there's only voice. Well, there we go. And I'm back. Let's go. All right, I think you should be able to see at least the presentation now. And then the camera gets all out of focus. Okay, okay. Alrighty. I think we're all set to give this a shot then. Okie doke. Okay, so as I was saying, my name is John, and Kaimo International is a video game studio, an international video game studio that I run. The reason why it's become an international studio is because of all of my experience. I'm now working with a lot of Japanese companies, and so the information that I will part to you will hopefully help you understand the Japanese industry a little bit more, and also maybe break into it. So let's go ahead and get started. Next slide. Okay. So a lot of this is going to be focusing on kind of the mobile industry, but you can always extrapolate the information I'm saying into the video game industry as a whole. But a lot of my expertise has been in mobile games, so a lot of the stats are going to be related to that as well. So the Japanese game market is one of the top 3, again, mobile game markets that is in the world right now. You know, you have the U.S. and you have China and you have Japan in that order. That's just one of the reasons that fascinated me from a very early on. I always knew that Japan was huge for games. We can kind of consider it like the mecca for games, right? When you think of Nintendo or Sega or any game of your childhood that you might have played, was most likely made over in Japan. So that kind of drew me to the country initially. Another thing is that the country as a whole has 50 million gamers, and then 36 million of them being mobile gamers. So that's about 40% of the population are people who play games, and they're playing it all the time. We're not even talking about demographics here. It's just culturally in it that people are playing games. Then again, back for the mobile scape is that the highest global interstitials for ad banners, the highest eCPMs are coming from Japan. So if you are a mobile game developer and you have your ads that are serving over in Japan, well, you're going to be able to make a lot more money from them because it's possible. Because if you have there are a lot of mobile gamers to play your game, that means a lot more opportunities to be able to show impressions, and then therefore you're making more money per 1,000 impression that comes up. So that kind of ties to the next point, where there's a lot of money that can be made for in-app purchases, because again, there's a lot of people playing games. The culture takes to technology very quickly. And also, I mean, around the world, we're all using our phones anyway. So that makes this like really hybrid, not even hybrid, but just really strong environment of people who are playing video games over in Japan. Really just quick sidebar, but additional note here is that, you know, in Square Enix's in their earnings call, Final Fantasy VII, you know, recently came out, the remake, right? But their box sales, their digital downloads, their disc sales are not really contributing to the growth that they're having right now. Most of their money is being made from their mobile games, and specifically their mobile RPGs, which is something I'll talk about a little bit later, and maybe why that is. But it's just crazy to show how much money there is to be made from the mobile game industry, and especially in Japan. But one of the issues that a lot of people have, and especially us international game developers who are looking at Japan, is that we have this high user acquisition cost, because we have no idea how to really find these users and get them to play our games. So I'm going to really talk about kind of like how maybe you as a external game developer can kind of get that user acquisition cost down by trying some micro level strategies and maybe some things that are a little bit unconventional. And then the last thing that I'm going to talk about or say here is that currently the Chinese game developers are occupying about 1/5 of the Japanese market. They realize that Japanese gamers are there's a lot of them, and also it's a lot easier for Chinese game developers to break into the Japanese industry because of the similarity in language. Chinese and Japanese, they share a common alphabet, one of the common alphabets, that being kanji, the pictorials. So it's a lot easier for them to localize and translate their games for the Japanese audience. So there's a lot of potential that's going on, but localization of the product is key and to penetrate the market. So let's go ahead and kind of break down to what that is. But just first, a real quick intro for myself. I moved to Japan in 2016. I became fluent in Japanese from a university called Kansai University. It was really tough. It was a lot of long days and long nights and a lot of quizzes and tests and essays of trying to inculcate this language into my head. But after I became fluent, I went ahead and tried to enter the video game industry, and I worked for a really small video game studio over in Fukuoka, which is down south. And we had the IP rights to one of Sanrio's characters. And if you know Sanrio, if you don't, that's okay. If you know Hello Kitty, which I'm sure you do, Sanrio is the company that made Hello Kitty, very famous. And we had an IP for another character called Gudetama, that little egg yolk that's at the top there. So we made a lot of games that use Gudetama. And when I was working there, I began to see the development style of how Japanese games really, really honed in on the cute nature, the kawaii culture. Kawaii means cute in Japanese. And that was really interesting to see, just to see how, one, the fact that the emphasis on characters was heavily stressed. And then also after that was the emphasis on the development regimen. We sometimes would work from 9 a.m. till 2 a.m. And no one would bat an eye, which is kind of crazy, but it was an interesting experience to see exactly how Japanese games were made. We suddenly switched over to blockchain games. If I have some time later, if anyone has any questions, I can talk more about blockchain games. And what that means, but there are new games that utilize cryptocurrency. One of the reasons why I went to Slush was over, cryptocurrency and some projects that we were working on. But some of the games that we began to make and some of the games that are coming to the space right now are making game economies from assets that can be traded amongst users. So if you have like a sword that you find in the game, you can sell that to someone for a cryptocurrency, which then can back out into fiat. And again, Japanese gamers are really taking to this game, to these type of games as well, which is fascinating. So while I was in Japan, I launched my first independent title called Worm Z, which is short for Wormzilla, about a mutated worm that that wreaks havoc on society. But the reason why it was made was to consume and eliminate all the radioactive waste that has proliferated the Earth and the future. And so you're made to eat the radioactive waste, and as you eat it, you get stronger and faster, but as collateral damage, you eat a lot of humans. So I was working on that game before, and I decided to release my first game over in Japan. And so some of these strategies I'm going to talk about are going to relate into my own personal journey of when I released this game. And so hopefully we can extract some of these strategies that I did, and you can utilize them for your own small game, or if you're maybe reduce some of your costs by getting in at a lower user acquisition. And right now I do some IP work for Japanese companies, and as well as doing independent game development, and as well as do Japanese marketing. So moving right along here, the first strategy that we want to go into is localizing with cultural configurations. So localization is obviously more than just translation. I feel like everyone here knows that, but I want to kind of talk about how localization really plays into our culture, plays into Japanese culture, plays into localization. There are certain things that you can do, or certain things that are going to be in your game that are going to make the Japanese audience be more receptive to your game. So the game that I was talking about that I made, Wormzilla, was pixel art. Dot.a is the word in Japanese. Pictures, and that's what pixel art translates to. And so pixel art, it's always just well received by the Japanese game audience. We just go back to the old games that were first made, and it's really funny how like that standardization makes individuals more willing and welcome to play your game, because they already kind of know what framework to think in, and framework and mindset, and being able to tell people what they're going to expect really helps when you're localizing a game, or rather when you're dealing with the Japanese audience. So something like pixel art makes them like, okay, I know what's going on here, and I want to see it. I want to see how it's done. I want to see how pixel art's done. It has that retro feel, but it's not just retro where it's going to die out. I mean, it's always in Japan. So if you have a pixel art game, or if you have something that's in there, even if it's not even your core game itself, but as a marketing strategy, if you have something that's pixelated, you're going to get some decent reception. And so my art style was like that, so people were welcome to it. Another thing that I did was I made a manga, and mangas are Japanese comics. If anyone has any questions at any time, go ahead and put them in the chat or in the Q&A, by the way. But mangas are Japanese comics. Any anime initially start off as a manga, right? Most likely. And so the literacy rate in Japan is huge. Mangas are just another way people, it's just as a commercial tool, and people just read. And so what I did was I linked up with an artist that I knew, who I've always wanted to collaborate with, and we actually made the origins of telling why the main character in my game, Wormzilla, which is Wormzilla, came to be. We explained that through a manga that you can see over here in the image on the right. And that worked out really well. Like a lot of Japanese people were like, "Oh, this is cool," and like, "Oh, I can understand more about your game because you have this framework that I recognize." And that's what localization is. That's what you're doing with the cultural standpoint. And it's really fun to be able to give this a shot. I never really made a manga before, but you got to be able to have your text go from top to bottom, because that's how Japanese mangas and text usually reads. And once you do that, you just gotta, be sure your Japanese is pretty decent. And my Japanese is okay, but these are a lot of complex terms, so it wasn't perfect, but it was really well received, and that helped get more hype about the game. So small little tidbits like that help. And then there's certain genres that play into this and into Japanese culture, into Japanese culture, but also into the games that do well in a country. And so I'm going to talk about just a little bit of cultural anthropology here, to take it a little step back, but it's really fun. There's an individual named Geert Hofstede, who is a social psychologist who did cultural dimension theory between nations. And you can see how this study shows how these dimensions of culture impact business settings, but not just business settings, in my personal opinion. I think they impact games as well, and game genres. So here we have individualism. The word in Japanese is kojin shugi versus shudan shugi, which is collectivism. And so individualism here, as an example, from the study that Geert Hofstede did, is more expressed in the United States, almost 2 times more than it's expressed over in Japan. Now, why is that the case? Maybe because of a very strong capitalist sentiment of commerce, of us being an individual and bringing ourselves up by our bootstraps and trying to get ahead and getting that promotion and getting paid for the specialization that you have as an individual. Now, that doesn't really play over in Japan, where shudanshi, collectivism, is more of the key, where it's all individuals together working towards a common goal. And I saw that in the company that I used to work for, that everyone there was very much like the structure was flat. And I thought I was doing a good job and I wanted a raise, but no, that's not going to happen. If a raise is going to happen, everyone's going to get them. And everyone's willing to work late. That's not just a business, the culture is like that. I mean, it's very homogenous, but it's beautiful in a way. I mean, both have their good and bad parts. So when we talk about video games, if you were to guess what type of games express individualism, if I could do a show of hands, I would love to ask everyone dynamically, but in the interest of time, those type of games would be more war simulators like Call of Duty or Battlefield. Those games, which are made over in America, which should do really well in America, highlight that individual aspect. Now, I know that we have online play and you can play with teams, but the core sentiment of that game is for you to be in a first-person shooter with you being the person who needs to take down the opponent who's in front of you. And those games do really well here. I believe they do decently well in Europe as well, but we're going to do a stark contrast maybe to really understand how we have things going on in the US and over in Japan. But those games do not sell well over in Japan. Now, vice versa, shudan shugi, collectivism, which is a cultural sentiment, which is seen in the business place and reflecting in games. If we were to think about games that reflect that type of cultural aspect, we have Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest, right? Anything that is PvE, player versus environment, where we have everyone together against a common enemy. Those are the games that do well, and that's why Final Fantasy has such fanfare, and is why it's iconic, and why other games are like that as well. And mobile games are like that as well. All these additional contents that come available from mobile games, all of them are to be added to a party system where you have your party of different classes, and that party goes against a common enemy, not against humans usually. I mean, you'll have humans, maybe, but if it's a human, it's a group battle. It's a 3v3 type thing, but it's not usually one-on-one. It's not really of a killing murderous nature. It's more of a purpose, and it's against something. So if you see here, just kind of this old data set that I found, I can't exactly remember where, so I apologize. The stark thing I just want to show is that role-playing games are, the percentage of people who are playing them are really high over in Japan, as opposed to, shooting games, which are on the far right, which are more seen in the United States and also China for some reason. This data set's a little bit old. But again, the stark contrast is what I want to show, is that more than the other country, it is Japan that likes role-playing games. And so if your game that you are trying to break into the Japanese market with is one that's more of a malicious nature, in which it's one against another, that might not work so well as if it's a party game, or if it is a game where it's an individual against an external threat. Maybe not aliens as much as we're looking at just an environment, or something that's going on with maybe climate or something like that, more abstract and more aesthetic. Those type of games will have a higher chance of being well received by the culture, and that's just something just to think about. And if it doesn't apply to your game, then you can still apply it maybe as a marketing strategy. So you can mix and match these things, these sentiments. But I just want to kind of show that how culture plays into the types of favoritism when it comes to game genres. So MicroStrategy number 2, we'll go a lot faster now because that was the longest one. Do you even tweet, bro? So don't know if people are really aware of this, but Japanese people use Twitter a lot. So the graph here on the right, which I found from Statista, shows the number of registered million Twitter users. And so we have the United States, which is the highest one. And then the next we have Japan, which is next up. And that's crazy because the population differences between Japan and the United States is huge, right? Japan has about 120 million. United States has got to be over 300 million. So we're talking, a little bit less than half. And yet, despite the fact that population difference, you still have the number of users almost just as much, which means that everyone's on there tweeting about something. There's so many people who are talking on there. Our esports game. Oh, how did you find this collaboration with the manga? Was it through mutual work? Yeah, I had a friend who I knew was a manga artist, and I just asked that individual to kind of help me out. But I don't think it's really hard for you to find a manga artist. All you gotta do is just look on Instagram and just see who's doing comic books. They don't have to be Japanese. This person wasn't Japanese. This person was American. You can look on Instagram and just search manga. You can go to DeviantArt. Is DeviantArt still a thing? But on there, I don't think it's really hard to find a collaboration for an artist. But if you'd like some help with that, you can ask me, and I can kind of help you see through the options. And are esports successful in Japan? Evo, which is just one of the biggest conferences, right? The last year it was held actually right next door to where I live, which is wild, over in Fukuoka. So esports they're starting to get some traction, a lot more traction now, especially over games like Tekken and Tekken and Street Fighter, right? Those Japanese games. So they're gonna have a lot more. They're gonna have a fanfare. They're gonna have a following. I mean, those games will never die. You go to a game arcade, which is 24/7 games that are open, and you can just go in there. You're always gonna catch some guy over there smoking a cigarette, playing Tekken, and he's ready to, excuse my language, whoop your ass any second because he's really good. So the fighters are successful, and then of course Smash. So those have a little bit of a healthy culture. Teams are starting to sprout up, but Japan's always a little bit slow. I don't mean that. I don't want to make that sound rude, but it's just now starting to become big. If you think it's just now starting to become big globally, it's just now starting to get picked up in Japan. It's true. I mean, they take the things just a little bit more times because of there's a lot of T's that need to be crossed and I's that need to be dotted before things become sentiment. Despite the fact that the games were there, even though the games are natively Japanese, Tekken and Street Fighter, esports was a sentiment that came not from Japan. So it's got to circle all the way back around. And I have plenty of examples how I could show that. So it's going to get bigger, but it's going to still follow the rest of the trends that are around the world. If you're on Twitter, it's very easy. It's a lot easier for you to share information about your game on Twitter. If you don't tweet, you should. And if you want to get to the Japanese audience, use a Google Translator, use some type of translator. There's better ones out there than Google Translator to kind of give information about your game. Because if you kind of just, if you kind of weed it out, you're going to get a response because everyone's on there talking about games. There are websites, obviously still, and this is again, remember, classic trends that are in the U.S. don't necessarily are happening over in America, or over in Japan, or around the world aren't necessarily happening in Japan. I have found that game review sites are a lot more selective and don't really write articles about games as much, or if they do, they want to have money from it. But that's not true when it comes to Japan. There's a lot of sites, a lot of game blogs out there about people wanting to write. And I'll talk about how that comes into some stuff later. But if you tweet out things, you're gonna get a response because people are actively talking about games and the games they play. Not just like, hey, I just released this game. It's like, no, I can't get past this boss. I need help. And someone else is tweeting back to you, be like, yo, you got to be sure you use this magic. That's happening over there. So again, feel out the audience through Twitter, and they don't use Discord, as opposed to us over in the West that we use Discord a lot. They just do not. And in my experience in the games I'm helping with some community management for, it's really hard. But if you're going to use it, might as well go ahead and use a translation bot. Those exist. So definitely something to kind of just consider if you want to build. If you're trying to build a community, which is very important for games, and you want to build a Japanese community, you should engage, maybe have a separate account for your Japanese account, because a lot of games that I help out with, they have an English account and they have a Japanese account. And so you have your Japanese account, which you're just kind of experimenting with, random tweets and random hashtags, right? And then you're trying to filter people into your Discord channel, where you have a translation bot, which will translate things and either to Japanese for them or into English for you. And it's better than nothing, right? So it'll auto translate into the language of your choice. It could also be Chinese if you'd like. And that way you can kind of build a community where your English players can talk to your Japanese players. And even though the translation won't be 100%, they'll still check it out. Right. Next slide. So this is actually the last micro strategy that I have here. Is some guerrilla marketing. And you got to do guerrilla marketing for the love of the game, and not just for your only love for the game, but for their love for the game. And if you do it for the love of the game, then you're going to have some positive response. So you should try translating, but really your universal language are games. And I think it's a really beautiful thing. Again, Japan is like the mecca for games, and the people that are over there are playing games because they love them, not necessarily because what's been shot in their face of all the ads that are in their face, like, oh, I must play this. Effective, of course, ads are effective, and that matter if you have a lot of money and you're able to put a huge ad in, like Clash of Clans, and they're able to put a huge billboard in the middle of the Shibuya crossing over in Tokyo. Like, yeah, you're going to have a positive response. Everyone's like, oh, this is cool. It's foreign. It's got to be something I got to play. Yeah, but that's going to cost you like a couple $1 million. But if you do some guerrilla marketing, and if you're in it for the love of the game, you're going to have a positive response. And I say that because I had this type of response. Japanese people love games. We all love games, but inherently the culture is there where they like them. So if you try to translate, they'll try in response, and they'll also try to check your game out. But even if you don't translate, if you just bring it over there, they'll look at it and they'll engage with it. There's some awkwardness there, some in general social awkwardness, because they don't know how to communicate with you. This game isn't in the language, but they'll try. You can see the try. You'll try to get them into it. So from the get-go, if you show a game, they will be receptive. And then everything I'm trying to tell you is that there's other things that you can do to make them more receptive and to make a little bit of buzz by loose translations, cultural sentiments, with the type of genre you have, or the art style, or something like a manga. And that plays into the writers as well. As I was saying, there's a lot of writers over there, and they're not looking for money. They're just looking for something interesting to write about. And I say this because if you look at the picture on the far right, all these kind of strategies I did. I went to trade shows, and I localized my game into Japanese, which you can see the home screen over there, Wormsy, that's the home screen. And it says new game, it says arcade settings and ranking in that order. And I went to a few shows and I talked about the game and I showed it to people, passed out some cards and stuff like that. And I was written about in this really, really popular website called 4gamer.net. And I didn't know who I talked to find out where this article came to be, but I networked and I showed individuals the game and just talked to them about games. And then all of a sudden I had a coworker was like, hey, did you know your game was featured on 4Gamer? And I'm like, how? Why? And then because I was like, my game is okay, but it's not great. But someone went on there and wrote about it. And it was a beautiful thing. I understand that like this is something that, again, maybe used to happen at the onset of mobile games, or not the onset, but like when mobile games were still very, very early stages in 2009, 2010. And anyone was wanted to write about articles to help get themselves to look more credible. But now people over, I feel like in the West are looking more about a little bit more maybe snooty, and if they want to get money for it. I just kind of get that vibe a little bit more. But people in Japan are just writing about it because they just want to. And for me, as an independent game developer, when I saw this, again, person never contacted me, and I don't even know if they knew if they could. I found the article, and I was like, this is awesome. This person is writing about a game, and it happened just to be my game. And it was really cool, and it was really gratifying to see that. And then around that time, with all these events that I went to, this was about last year, last May. All those events that I went to, brought in, a total of 500 daily active users, new installs and everything like that. Or, I'm sorry, 500 users total between the time that this was a really huge marketing campaign that I did. And so I would advise people to make a trip out of it. Everyone loves Japan. Everyone wants to go to Japan. Everyone loves the food and the culture. And so I would say just, try to plan your trip around one of these trade shows that happen. A big one's Bit Summit, if you don't know. Bit Summit usually happens in June, or May or June. And you can apply as a foreigner to exhibit at the show. It's ran by a good mix of both international people and Japanese individuals, and that's a really good showcase. That's the one I went to and kind of did some networking. Tokyo Game Show, that's a little bit harder one. It's a little bit of a bigger one, and that's more natively Japanese games and Japanese gamers. But you can clearly go to it if you'd like to. And then a new one's called Tokyo Sandbox, which is really nice. And then the last thing I have here is Campfire. And so Campfire is not an event, it's a platform. Kickstarter, Campfire is a Japanese version of Kickstarter. And I just happened to find this out. As I was networking, and I did a little bit of a Campfire campaign because it was more of a marketing campaign than I really needed the money. But at the bottom, you can kind of see that it made $275,000. No, I'm just kidding. And for yen, you have to chop off the last 2 zeros. So this made roughly $2,700. Just my marketing campaign of, again, showing people the manga and saying, hey, there's 3 pages of this manga. If you want it, we'll give it to you. And people really like that. Giving some, novelty cups and some other swag, putting people as pixelated characters in the game so they can be eaten by Wormsy. Certain things like that created hype around the game, and all of those activities bled into some decent success from a completely foreign market. And so I had about, let's see here, with all of that, I went to Tokyo for an event, I went to Osaka for an event, the game showcase tickets that I had to buy for Bit Summit, and getting around. I mean, I lived there, so it's kind of easy for me to get around. Business cards, promotional materials, adding all that kind of stuff up, and dividing it by obviously the number of players that I got. My user acquisition cost was roughly $1.66, $1.66. So that's not a lot for getting Japanese users. I mean, you have the highest user acquisition costs in the world, but if you kind of go these unconventional routes, you're able to be able to make a splash and get some hype around your game. And it's a really fun experiment. So if I just had to kind of summarize what we have is just do not be afraid to experiment, and that games are your universal language more than Japanese. Japanese is hard. It's really hard, but your universal language is games, and so don't be afraid to be able to show it to the audience. Try translations, even if they're rough. You know, again, if Japanese people see you trying, they will try in response. And if you can make your game adhere to the culture in some type of way, you know, maybe something cute in which you have just, you know, some promotional materials or a marketing campaign or a manga or whatever that kind of has some Japanese elements in it, you'll be received. Maybe if it's just like you're doing an ad banner on a phone, then if the ad itself has some wonky Japanese translations with something that's in pixel art, but then it goes into a game that's not even made with pixel art, you know, who knows how long that person's going to be playing your game, but your impressions for that country, you know, have a better chance of going up. It's very simple things like that you can play around with. And even if it's not your game, like I said, if it's your marketing campaign, it can work. Play around on Twitter, make yourself a, you know, whatever your game is, a .jp account, and go ahead and play around, do different hashtags, stuff like that. And then plan a trip to Japan to attend some of these events. Obviously, when the world gets back up and running again in terms of being able to meet physically and do these type of events. You know, plan your trips around those events and attend, because you'll have a fun time as a game developer or a game service provider anyway. And you'll have a bigger chance of being able to be with the niche audiences and communicate with them and see how they can receive your game. So that's kind of my personal experience. And we still got about 7 minutes here. So go ahead and feel free to ask me questions. Yeah. So, okay. All right, Jason. So let's see. How long did it take to get Wormzilla out to the market, and was it an immediate success? I consider its Japanese audience an immediate success. Wormzilla took me a really long time because in the midst of making the game, I moved to Japan. Well, first of all, when I started making Wormzilla, I was working full time. Then I moved to Japan, in which I was a student full time. And then I was working full time again. So I was, you know, just being a person who was working on it here and there. The probable total length of the time, you know, probably only took like a year, 2 years. But when you span that out over to the little time I had, this game took about 4 years, 5 years. So to get out to the market, yeah, it took that much time. It was the first game that I ever made on my own. I worked for companies and everything like that, but this game was for me to understand how the market worked, to understand how games work. The second game I'm making right now, which is augmented reality, which is in partnership with the Japanese studio. I mean, we already have our prototype of that done, and that took 17 days. Like, the game's going to be done, you know, hopefully within under a year. But so I wouldn't really look at this in terms of how long it took me, but it took me about 5 years. And it was an immediate success because of the guerrilla things that I did. Yeah, exactly. But I would say that it was a success because of these guerrilla marketing things that I did. And those guerrilla marketing things that I did was I plotted out every single event that was going on in Japan around that time. And even before that, it was the beginning of the year, and I looked at the events that were going to be going on. You know, just like video game meetups in Tokyo, video game meetups in Kyoto, video game meetups in Osaka, video game events in Tokyo, video game events in Osaka, video game events in Kyoto. I plotted each of those out and then made sure I would attend them. And so then I had my event set out. So I had my map, and then I began to make the promotional materials. So the guerrilla marketing was this campfire campaign, because again, Kickstarter, you can use Kickstarter if you want, but a really smart way to use Kickstarter or Campfire is a marketing campaign. So I got my Campfire campaign ready, and I, again, offer these incentives of, like, if you pledge $5, you'll be a character in the game. If you pledge, $25, you're going to get a cup. And so I had like a cup that had the character Wormzilla on it. And that was kind of like how I did my guerrilla marketing. I worked for a Tachinomiya-san, a side job of when I worked for a standing bar, and I asked them for one day if I could have a game event there, and they're like, yeah, sure. And so I invited people to come come play my game, and if they got a high score, they got a free drink. I mean, like, the drinks were really cheap anyway. So all those kind of things were guerrilla marketing tactics, were to get more buzz about the game, to make it look higher when it was inside the App Store, for App Store metrics, and also for the game to be seen from data points for potentially other people to find. Again, I don't know how this individual who wrote this article about me came to be, except for having these little small things that happen, this campfire campaign, these little tiny events, and then going to these bigger game events where this person found me. And that showed me that whatever I did, whatever guerrilla marketing that I did, which is being on the ground and talking to people, made it work. I took 3 guys out to these really veterans in the game industry. They were really cool. I took them out drinking, and we went to this anime bar in which they make the drink based on your anime character. So if you pick Pikachu, they make a Pikachu-esque drink. And these guys were like bosses. I mean, these were really cool senior people in the industry. And I networked with them. Maybe it was one of them who told someone else to write about it. It's networking is what it is. But when it's Japan, it's really just getting and being sociable with people. But some of the things that can work, again, is to look at Campfire. If you like Campfire, you can do it in English, you can do it in Japanese, and you can potentially get Japanese users that way and maybe get some money, and then look at these events. And again, try translation. I know it's going to be weird, but just stick it into the Google Translator and then let it come out, and then use that on Twitter and stuff like that. And you never know. Oh dear, hold on a second. Oops. You never know what might come of that. Oh man, I do not know why my screen just disappeared, but well, I only got 2 minutes anyway. But that's kind of it. I'm happy to field any more questions or to talk about kind of else like what I have going on. In the future, I'm going to be releasing a augmented reality game which uses blockchain technology, which is really cool. And the cool thing about it is that the Japanese partners I have are really excited about it. They might use it for the messaging platform. Line is like Japan's WhatsApp. And so those are kind of some of the things I'm working on now to kind of really find out how to. The challenges now is how to really attract both markets in a single game, rather than adhere to the game, but from the start, make a game that can really cater to both markets and then kind of go from there. That's kind of what I'm focused on right now. But let me see. So yeah, that was pretty much it. And I have my Twitter account here, Kaimon, Kaimon, International, INTL. So if you'd like to follow me there, please do. So I can give you more information, or you can contact me there. I'm on the servers here, or on the platform here, so you can let me know. Santedi, thanks so much for letting me come through here. Yeah, hit me up, Jason. Please do. Thank you, Daniel. That means a lot. I try. I've been told that I'm high octane like that, and I appreciate that. But yeah, so that's all I got, guys. So I think.
Wiesz co, to daj mi tego pilota. Uważaj, bo prawy to jest lewy. Dobra, już. Okay, are we ready? Yo, fantastic. Okay, so we are online. Hello, everybody. Welcome in Bones Studio. My name is Adrian Perdion, and I'm a motion capture actor, performer, and also a CEO of the Bones Studio. We are located in Poland, and I'm here to show you how we work during the COVID situation and during the pandemic, and how works the remote mocap system we developed in our studio, which let our clients from a whole planet, basically, to do the motion capture remotely, straight from the offices in United States or from the coach in their own home. As you can see, we have a pretty large stage. It's 10 by 10 meters, and we have 61 Vicon cameras around. And maybe not all of you are familiar with motion capture technology. And let me explain how it works at the beginning. We have markers, optical markers, attached to the body of an actor, and there is 51 markers attached to the body in different places. And all of the cameras around have a strobe of infrared light. And so the red rings around the cameras you can see on the screen, it's not a, let me show you how it works. So it's not just a light for fun, but it's also oh, wow. It's also the emitter of infrared light, which is odbijany, reflected from the markers. So the camera can see the cloud of dots. And because there is 61 of them, and each camera can see the cloud of dots from different angle, we can make a reconstruction of whole really precise human skeleton moving on the stage. On this kind of stage, we can capture 4 or 5 people at once. And because we have a remote system, you can look around the studio to see, zoom out. Yeah, let me show you the place. We have the technical crew behind the computer. Damien, hide your nose, please. And there is also the workshop with props, because when we are doing the motion capture, we need to build the whole environment using a transparent stuff, because we can't hide the markers from the cameras. So everything we build here, walls, stairs, tables, chairs, everything, it needs to be transparent. So every single custom furniture we are using is building there in the warehouse. I'm sorry, it's some balagan. It's a mess there, but we had a session today for a whole day, and we had over hours, and basically this is why we are a little bit late. I'm sorry for that. We should be here about 9 p.m. Polish time, but we couldn't do it earlier. So here we go at the half of the night. Okay. As you can see on your screen, we have a view from the main camera. Radek, can you switch the view between cameras? We have the view from the main camera, which is remote controlled. When we have a session with our clients, they can control the camera. I have the remote control for the camera, but there is also buttons on the screen which you can use to look around the stage or make a zoom on actors on the stage. So we have the view from the camera at the top of the cage here, where you can see the whole volume, and the camera from the side, which we can move and put it wherever we want, and we can use it as a reference camera on the stage. And there is also we called it the virtual camera. and it's a real-time previsualization in the game engine. We are using the Unreal Engine at this moment, and you can see the the character walking around on the stage. Can you switch the Unreal view? Okay, great. So as you can see, we can use the environment, and we can put the character and stream the skeleton straight on the 3D model in the engine and animate it in a real time. It's time to show you how the virtual camera works. Because basically, when we are recording and we have the cutscenes doing on the set, we can also let the cameraman, the operator, to use the virtual camera on the rig, and he can walk on the stage, and he can walk around the actors doing shots using the real camera. I will show you how it works. So this is the virtual camera. It's pretty simple. There is no camera on the camera. There is only markers attached to the rig, and we can track the markers on the rig, and because of that we can see the preview. Oh my. We can see preview on the screen. So the cameraman have a preview of, let me show you. We have a preview on the screen of the character, and it's basically no delay between the movement on an actor and the movement of the character. As you can see, he has a shadow already. Maybe we could have some wind around. Oh, no. There is walk side. Don't do it. And we are streaming the view using the transmitter of video. So if we will use the characters from your game, we can create cutscenes basically real time. How do we do it? We capture not only the body, we can capture also the face, the mimic of the character, and the movement of fingers. How to do it? Let me show you what kind of hardware we use to capture the character, the actor's performance on the stage. I will make some close-up. Yeah. Have you ever heard about gloves to capture the movement of fingers? We are using this kind of gloves. There is no sensors attached to the fingers. There is no sensors in the glove. There are some stripes inside. And when you put your hand in it, you can change the shape of stripes inside the glove, and we can capture how much did you move your hand, your fingers. And then we can animate the hands and fingers in engine in real time. For faces, some clever guys invented the helmet. It's called head-mounted camera, and it's really head-mounted, to be honest. So there is a helmet you can put on your head. Oh yeah, this way. And there is a camera in front of your face which capture whole emotion and whole movement of some parts of your face. We can track the movement of lips, nose, eyes, eyebrows, gałek ocznych, eyeballs. And special software is tracking the video frame by frame, and it's creating also the skeleton for face. Then you have to make a retargeting of the movement from the basic skeleton into the 3D model, and voila, you can get animated character in your game. There are many ways to make a motion capture. I'm sure that many of you heard about inertial suits. we are also using the inertial suits, and it's pretty clever technology. You can use sensors like this one. It's pretty simple sensor, like your mobile phone. There is a gyroscope, accelerometer, accelerometer, yeah, and some other technology inside. And there is 15 of this kind of sensors attached to the body. When you make a calibration of your body, then you can capture the movement of the character, and you can record it in the software dedicated to this kind of technology. And it's nice because using the inertial suits, you can do motion capture not only in the studio where you have some ograniczenia, limits, where you have limits because you can't go out. You can perform only on the carpet. With inertial suits, you can go outside and you can capture whole performance you need on the bigger volume or in the car, for example. It's really nice for doing the motion capture in car. Car is really difficult because we can't put car inside, and even if we will go inside the studio with the real car, it's really difficult to make a motion capture because it's solid construction. You can see the markers of your feet under the wheel and stuff like that. So then you can use the inertial suit and make a motion capture of the performance inside the car. Okay, let's talk about the most funny part of the motion capture. We have the huge collection of guns, swords, and other stuff, because every kind of game or every character, yeah, needs a different kind of gun. So we have a huge collection of shotguns, rifles, bows, some historical rifles like this one. And it's all real. Of course, it's not a real gun. We can't shoot using it, but it works like it works exactly like this kind of gun, because when you capture the movement, you need to have a precise movement of the gestures. And so to make a precise animation dedicated for the game, for example, some shooter or other game, you need to use exactly the same weapon that is created for the game or used in the game, because there are two kinds of guns: created, designed by game developers or designers, and some real guns like M5 or Kalashnikov or other kind of weapon. In our studio, we have a service of we have a huge bunch of services. We are doing the casting using your briefing, your character design. We are choosing right actors, English speaking mostly, because most of the projects we are capturing here is in English, of course. And so we have the whole collection, big collection of English speaking actors. And then we are also preparing the stage, we are preparing the shooting, we are shooting, and after that we have to do a cleanup. It's kind of cleaning the data captured on the optical stage. And after that, we are offering also the retargeting on your 3D model, and basically we can deliver the final animation straight into the game engine. So it's really simple to create the game with moving characters, with humans, when you have when you can use the motion capture. And using the remote motion capture let you to do it quite cheap, basically. You don't have to spend money on traveling cost, you don't have to spend money for accommodation, for hotels, you don't have to pay extra rate for your crew who will come to Poland to visit the studio and spend here some days. You can do it every day by 8 hours using the remote system. We have microphones here. Of course, actors are also with microphones. Whole crew is using microphones for communication, two-way audio. You can see us in real time, I believe. I hope there is no lag already, and you can see me in real time. And you can make a supervision of the session on your own, or you can send some just small team to the studio like this one and do the whole supervision from your couch or your armchair or headquarters or office or whatever, wherever you are located. It's pretty simple, and it works, and it's really nice. Do we have the experience? Yes, we do. I'm doing the motion capture for the last 13 years, and my first project was the game called The Witcher 1. Then I performed most of the male characters in The Witcher 2. And after that, in 2013, we opened the first studio of motion capture. It was in a different place, and during that time we changed the location. We are in new space, and we also changed the brand. Now we are Bones. Before that we were calling the mocap.pl. You can find us on mobile Moby Games or other places if you are looking around about the motion capture services. For sure you will find the mocap.pl or Bones Studio as one of the best on the market. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me. You can find the email address on our website. It's bones.studio. It's pretty simple, I believe. And you can like me, or like the studio on the Facebook, or you can follow us on Instagram, where we are trying to put some pictures sometimes. We can do the many pictures because most of the projects are behind the NDA. But I believe that you will find something interesting there. It's pretty late here, and we are after the long session. I hope that you already seen everything here. Guys, what do you think? Can we tell about something else here in the studio? No idea. Okay. If we can answer your questions, feel free to email us, send a message. And you can also contact with I'm not sure, can we answer some questions here? Is there any chat window? We can see the questions. Okay, guys, so we can see some questions. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them, and we will try to answer all of them. In the meantime, let me show you the power of Unreal. It's really great fun. Damian, can you switch the virtual camera? Yeah. Radek, can you can you make it full screen? It's already full screen. Okay. There is a walk side. Don't walk in. Just stań na piance. Okay, it's still too low. We should do it a little bit higher. The light is amazing here. So basically, it's a virtual production, guys. We can stream it using the fiberglass connection, internet connection, and we can stream it straight into your game engine to help you create movie, cutscene, or some basic movement for your game. I love the shadow. The shadow is amazing. Can we see the sea? Can I see the sea? Oh, it's shaking. Okay, now. I'm not sure, can you see it, but the sea is floating. Oh, there is a wind on the grass. Oh, and there is a Marcin. Say hi. Zrób szpagat. Jeszcze raz, proszę. Oh, very good question. The cost of mockup is high, and can we find some indie solution? Yes, we do. And we have a special offer dedicated for indie game developers, and we have a special price for indie game developers. So if you have a project, you need a motion capture, just email me, tell me what kind of projects is that and what kind of animation do you need and what kind of services you need, and I will prepare a quotation dedicated for you. We are in Poland. It's Eastern Europe, so we have fantastic quality, we have huge experience with game development, but also still we have a great prices, so I'm sure you can afford it. And I believe that we can find some great way to find the best offer for you. C is amazing, isn't it? Yeah, it's the whole world is moving. It's live, and I believe that it's a future. And of course, I'm sure you have seen already the Unreal 5 demo released a few days ago, and it looks almost realistic. I believe that someday we will create movies, photorealistic movies, in the place like this, without going outside and looking for great best places. We will create them in a computer, and it will look even better than reality. Yeah, that might be great. Another question? Okay, so we have 2 minutes left, and there is another presentation waiting for you, and you are waiting for another presentation. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being a guest in the Bones studio. I hope we can meet in the future. If you have any questions, feel free to email me, adrian@bones.studio. Good night, or good morning if you are on the other side of the planet. See you soon, and I believe we will all stay healthy, and the COVID pandemic will be end soon. Cheers, bye. Stop broadcasting.
And really I'm excited about working on that intersection of education and commercial enterprises. So That's a little about me. Let's jump into the actual topics of today. Just before we get to that, actually, we do have an exclusive bonus and offer for any conference attendees. So stick around to the end for that. We'll be offering some free use of the platform. So do stick to the end, and we'll get that offer pasted into the chat for you to share around. My goal for this session is very straightforward. I want to talk you through how a learning management solution can improve your remote onboarding and in-office staff onboarding, training, and ongoing skills development. Pretty big topic, a very poignant topic in today's world, and we're really hopeful that it's going to provide some insight into how learning management systems can fit their way into your existing framework to either supplement what you're doing or completely replace exactly what you're doing today. How we're going to get there is pretty straightforward. We're going to start with looking at the problem and how a lack of training impacts your actual ROI with a few examples. We're going to take a look at a couple of Thinkific customers and real examples of those customers and how they've been using an LMS to achieve their goals. Then we'll talk more specifically about benefits of a learning management system and what you need in order to actually launch a good program. And then finally, we're going to share 5 steps to actually get started. So pretty straightforward things to really transition yourselves away from where you are today to where you actually want to be in the future. But let's actually start with what the fundamental problem. There's a 23% turnover rate among new hires before their first anniversary due to a poor onboarding experience. And I know that many of you out there will know exactly what the implications are for a business and how costly that can be. But typically, that turnover can cost anywhere between 1 to 3 times your actual employee's salary. And of course, that's all due to the implications of costs of hiring, research, finding the right individuals, finding the right candidates, processing them, all of the background checks that you need to go through. The cost of turnover can be extraordinarily high, not to mention the fact that it typically takes up to 8 months for employees to actually reach full productivity. So a very costly business not actually ramping employees up properly and onboarding them effectively. But naturally, to compound that problem that organizations are typically experiencing with today's current state of remote work, having your team engaged and up to date is probably more important than ever. And I can speak from experience here at Thinkific. We've seen a huge influx of companies who were perhaps considering in the past what digital onboarding might look like, now suddenly having to grapple with exactly how they fit that into the modern world and today's world to adapt and keep their businesses going as a going concern. I think it's really worth asking ourselves, why does employee training fail, and what are the pitfalls that we typically see with organizations, and why do those happen? I think the first obvious one is that many companies either don't have a formal onboarding or training program, or if they do, they lack the structure and often require employees to opt in, so it's usually dropped by the wayside. The other the other kind of pitfall we see is that coaching and mentoring and one-on-one check-ins are often not offered, making it very difficult for employees to actually express what their growth needs are to their manager and have them feel valued at that organization. Another interesting one is clear expectation settings around how their role fits within the organization, what they should expect from the business, what the expectations of themselves will be. Not setting those very early on in the relationship can really sour things very quickly, where an employee may have been expecting one thing but actually got another. This is a real crucial one, that training often stops after the first week. I've definitely experienced this, where I had a rather intense 1-week onboarding and then was effectively thrown to the wolves to figure things out myself. And 1 week simply isn't enough time to fully ramp a single employee, and the average really is about 8 months. And we have a saying in the account executive industry in Vancouver that no account executive is ramped up fully until a 12-month point. So discontinuing onboarding and education for employees past week 1 is simply not the way to go, because so much needs to take place after that period of time. And finally, of course, there's a lack of analytics. I think for a large number of HR professionals who may be present today, not being able to track where things are going wrong in their process, not being able to track what's engaging employees really well and what isn't working, not being able to do that is a real problem, because it doesn't allow for a feedback loop to be created where really effective training and education gets to feed back into optimization for the future. Now, I think it is worth asking, well, is this something that would work for me? And so we wanted to talk through a couple of case studies that Thinkific has to show you the art of the possible and what some of our larger customers have achieved. My Tutor is a really interesting company based out of the UK. They're actually an e-learning company that provides tutoring services to students and underprivileged schools across the United Kingdom. And in 2019, they actually received feedback of a lack of consistency in their tutors from schools. So they built out a mandatory education program for new staff. As a result, they've seen an increase in school, student, and parent satisfaction alongside a 24% increase in quality checks passed. So as a result of that, they're seeing a huge increase in positive reputation, and their business continues to scale at a rapid pace. Of course, naturally, because they're able to do all of that training remotely. I think it's really impressive that they've managed to achieve that with just 8 courses and almost 20,000 students going through the system to achieve those outcomes. Another great story, and definitely my favorite, but we are slightly biased being a Vancouver-based company, is Procurify. And really, the story here is around how employee education can also save your high growth team a lot of hours of work. Procurify is a procurement software company, as I mentioned, based in Vancouver, and they actually started their employee education program to teach their team about their product. So when you're onboarding with Procurify in your first week, you'll go through a Thinkific learning platform and learning path to learn how to use Procurify's product. Interestingly enough, when I actually onboarded with Thinkific, that's exactly what I did as well. I went through our learning paths to actually understand how the Thinkific platform worked, and now I had a much quicker time to value in actually adopting that. What's really cool about Procurify, of course, is they haven't just limited this scope for what a learning management solution can do to just educating on how to use the platform, and they've now extended learning and education into human resources, sales, customer success, and a couple of other departments. In terms of the outcomes there, they've actually been saving about 15 training hours per week that they no longer have to do in person, because all of that content is digitized and held in one space, and students can be enrolled in those courses at scale and even repeat those courses any number of times that they like. So really saving a lot of time and a lot of effort with very minimal courses as well. The final story here is a real great story of scale. Meesho is an e-commerce app that enables individuals to start their own online store. Since launching less than 6 months ago, they've actually trained over 600,000 of their customers, leading to an increase in the average transactions and customer satisfaction. So this is a really interesting kind of cross point of leveraging education on how to use a platform to actually get better outcomes for the individuals that you're training. So in this specific circumstance, Meesho are training individuals on how to use specific elements of the software to increase those individuals' success, which naturally obviously brings more and more success for Meesho. So just 13 courses and 600,000 students over a period of 6 months. Also in multiple languages, so you can see that there is a huge opportunity for scale, not just in terms of employee education, but a couple of other areas as well. So let's talk a little bit about what those other use cases for Thinkific and learning management in general are. We've obviously talked about employee education, but obviously customer education is a huge challenge for a large number of the businesses in this room and for us today. And so what we're seeing, Hootsuite being a really great example of this. Hootsuite is a large social media management company, again, based out of Vancouver. You can see our bias kicking in here. And Hootsuite's a really interesting situation because they started using Thinkific just by giving out free courses to their customers, educating them on how to leverage the platform, similar to Meesho, similar to Procurify. But what we actually saw with Hootsuite was they also started to expand their horizons and look to how they could leverage the platform in different ways. So they actually went beyond just customer education into B2B programs. So instead of just selling to individuals, they sold to large businesses and created large contracts with bespoke landing page experiences, such that the employees of those large B2Bs that they're selling to will land on that page and have a really custom white labeled experience and learn how to use the Hootsuite platform, which ultimately leads to a greater adoption of the solution in the short and long term, as well as more revenue for Hootsuite at the end of the day. Internal training, obviously, we've discussed. It's not just employee onboarding that we're really thinking about today, but really the ongoing training that you want to provide for your employees, training being one of those elements. And something that we've seen a huge uptick in, I'd say, in the last about month or two is, of course, online summit recordings. So just as we are meeting today, we've actually released features and functionalities that would allow any of our customers to run live webinars and meetings directly within our platform via our Zoom integration, which I will talk about in just a little bit. And of course, another great element is that continuing education institutions who need to actually ascertain and certify that students have completed a piece of content and have demonstrable evidence of that can use our platform to export the information that they need to give certifications and continuing education credits to students who need them. So lots of different use cases that Thinkific can support, that you can really widen your mindset and the scope of your horizons in terms of what you think you can achieve with this platform. Let's talk about the more general benefits of using a learning management system. I think one of the obvious ones is standardizing training. So obviously storing all of your content in one place reduces the risk of losing that important data and even making organizing it a pretty easy task. So each team member can easily access courses, information, or anything else through our cloud storage system. To actually ensure that training is consistent, managers can actually monitor the staff progression through the learning management dashboard. So you can easily see the progress of your students, whether it be how much they've looked at and how much of the content that they've actually completed. Another really important element is continuous iteration on your content. So if there are new legislative requirements that emerge, it's really important to ensure that you can continuously update and change that course content over a period of time if you need to. And finally here, in terms of standardization, you can easily send out new training materials through drip content to keep employees up to date with best practices. So what drip content means, it's a really cool concept and a great concept to leverage if you've got a lot of content to provide. Drip content simply means releasing content over a period of time. So for example, you might feel that you want to release Financing 101 in week 1. And in order not to overload your employee with all of that information, you might release the contents over a period of days such that they have sufficient time to go through that information at their own pace or at the pace that you dictated for them. Also, of course, you can use drip content feature just to release any new information that comes to mind. Of course, a pretty obviously implied savings here is the reduction in training costs. Face-to-face training is incredibly expensive, especially if your business spans across multiple locations, which many of us are at this time. And for many businesses in the room, I imagine that you do have business across all of North America or perhaps even all of Europe, probably more applicably for this group. And so reducing travel, venue, catering costs, of course, is a huge financial savings for businesses by going digital. Of course, courses can be easily reused and updated. It's very straightforward within a platform to duplicate content, pull content from one course or another, to just reuse and repurpose all of the content that you have in place rather than having to redesign an entire learning path again. And of course, one course can reach as many employees as you actually want it to, as opposed to in-person training. Perhaps when you're in-person training, you might have a limitation of 10 individuals because of the complexity of the training that you do. But digital courses have effectively no limitations. As we saw with Misho, they've put over 600,000 students over a very limited number of courses to educate them on how to use the platform, which is a really scalable approach to educating as many people as you want to at one time. This is, I imagine, a really poignant issue for many of us in the room today, and something that I think is really worth pointing out, that supporting remote staff is a huge benefit of leveraging a learning management solution. I myself have benefited from this, being a new employee at Thinkific, starting late 2019 and early 2020. And as we've transitioned to being remote, leveraging our system to continue my learning and onboarding has been really effective, because my training materials are available to me basically anywhere at any time, whether I want to look at it on my phone at lunchtime or if I actually want to look at it at my desktop at home as well. Naturally, we can actually serve different learning styles, and we'll talk more about this towards the end when we get to our tips on how to create this learning content. But what's really important is having a diversity of the type of learning that you're going to provide for students. This kind of overlaps quite well with self-driven and self-paced learning. Allowing students to complete content at their leisure is really helpful for them, typically because people learn very differently. I myself am not a particularly visual learner. I read most of the information that I want to try try and digest. And so I make more use out of PDFs than I would out of videos. But having the option and the ability to have different types of learning styles is really important to cover all of the different types of personalities that you might encounter in this journey. And of course, driving engagement with blended learning. There's no point having a learning management course that no one's actually going to be engaging with. You want to intermix all of the different types of content that you have with different types of blended learning, whether that be quizzes, whether that be assignments, whether that be a community engagement component. You want to try and completely reiterate all of the different learnings that you want to provide, but in different ways. And finally, we talk a lot about results and reporting. In my entire career in software as a service, reporting has been a fundamental concept, just simply for the need to be able to monitor how effective any program is and feed that back to a leadership team to actually justify why a program is ongoing. So tracking student progress and engagement is really important. So information like course completion rates, engagement rates, assessment grades, employee feedback can all be gathered in the form of reports directly from a learning management solution like Thinkific, and you can then prove to the leadership team the ROI that you're getting from that solution if you are getting an ROI. And of course, the ability to reduce administrative efforts by actually having all of your data in one place rather than having to flick around in different locations to find all of that information. Okay, so with all of that being said and having looked at all of the benefits of a learning management solution, what we'll do now is we'll take a look at the 5 steps that are needed to kind of start your employee education program so that hopefully some of you on this call today will actually learn something and be able to put that into action and actually make some progress in transferring all of your content to the digital world. This first step, I think, is probably the most important step, and it's really actually defining why you're doing the training and understanding exactly what it is that you're wanting to get as an outcome. First, start by talking to your team. A lot of employers will actually miss this element of creating onboarding and training. It's asking yourself what your employees need to know, essentials like security, company information, benefits information, things like that. Those are the table stakes of what an employee absolutely must learn in their first couple of weeks. But also ask your employees what they'd like to know. Employees often know exactly what it is that they need to make them feel more confident in their work. And managers may also have good ideas around the skills that could improve their overall team's performance. So simply asking your team exactly what type of learning content they would benefit from is probably going to be a lot easier for you than simply trying to make it up by yourselves. And of course, ask your employees how they like to learn. As I've mentioned, I'm not a particularly visual learner, but the majority of people are. Understanding what tendencies you have within your team and the types of content you're going to need in order for that content to resonate is a really important step to take before you actually start building. The second step is really to determine your business learning outcomes. So as I mentioned earlier, this is an essential component, which is effectively defining what your business goal is. So looking at your current reality and then looking at what your desired future state is, and then translating that into a learning outcome from that goal. So looking at the ideal place to start and then looking at the learning outcome that you want to achieve. And I think this is best understood with an example from a current customer of ours. So we'll go back to Procurify. Their goal was really to improve employee product knowledge during onboarding. So what they did was they created an internal program using Thinkific to enable that employee onboarding and improving that product knowledge. And as a consequence, the business outcome that they achieved was saving all of the hours that they spent on training. They improved their retention overall, and they improved their employee net promoter score. So looking at the outcomes that you're looking to achieve, similar to those ones at the bottom there, will help you in working backwards to thinking about the type of learning and education that you want to deploy. If it is around product adoption, if it's around customers using your software more frequently, then you certainly want to design learning and education programs that will help customers better understand your solution and understand how to leverage that. Of course, the third step is to really select your learning management system. Now, we will acknowledge that we have a bias towards ourselves. We think that we've created an amazing platform. Thinkific itself as a business was created for entrepreneurs and small businesses around 8 years ago, founded by our CEO, who was a lawyer at the time, who was frustrated with the basically lack of ability to easily create and upload content and do it very seamlessly and scalably. So he created Thinkific with some co-founders. And today where we find ourselves, we've really graduated out of that small business and employee space and entrepreneur space, to seeing a large demand in the mid-market from companies like Procurify, companies like Hootsuite, etc., who are really looking to be able to scale with confidence and have the white glove level of support. So obviously with Thinkific Plus, which is our enterprise and business package, we give you the ability for high growth, high volume businesses to scale, be flexible in that scale, and have the reliability from an enterprise package that you would typically expect. Obviously, that comes with a dedicated customer success manager. You might think of that as an account manager and that white glove service. And of course, we do have features that support growth. So an open API, single sign-on capabilities, unlimited administrators, B2B group management, and more. So effectively, we can ensure that we'll always be able to scale with the number of individuals and with all of the capabilities that you'll need. As I've mentioned, Misho brought on 600,000 students over a space of 6 months. And particularly in the last couple of weeks and months, we've seen a large number of businesses who have brought on a large number of students in a very short period of time. So we're very confident about our ability to scale with any size of business that you might be thinking of and any type of initiative that you might want to do with this platform. Just a couple of other examples and quotes from our customers. We have a large number of Thinkific Plus customers to date, and we're growing pretty rapidly, particularly in light of the position that we find ourselves in globally. And so obviously we're very confident about the kind of service that we provide for our Thinkific customers and the scale that we're able to provide as well. Of course, once you've selected your learning management system, whatever that may be, bringing it all together and building your course is probably one of the more challenging things if you've never actually done that before. So let's take a look at a couple of tips that we found that we think are really going to help you do that. The likelihood is you already have some type of content that's used to support your internal training needs. And it might be appealing to throw all of this into a course. It is important to remember that what your business outcome is and build off of that. So maybe not all of the information that you currently have is applicable to the actual goals that you have in mind. A framework that we use that could help you repurpose the content you already have is by Aleda Solis, who's an SEO consultant who built it for content marketing, but it does work really well here. And you can see a lot of overlaps between the types of content marketing and the types of things that we're doing here. So we think it's really applicable and it may be helpful in what you're looking to do. The first step really that you're looking to do is when you have a piece of content is you want to determine if it can be expanded on to support your employee education needs. So this might be training materials, it might be a slide deck, it might be a case study or other bite-sized content about a role or your company culture, for example. So you might have a deck around company culture and your ethos that you'd like to adapt and expand upon. You also might want to reformat books, slide decks, etc., to take advantage of any of the other types of content that you have internally. Curate any information from blog posts or notes that other internal teams may have available. Refocus some of that same content that you've already got. So, for example, you may have sales-related content that you might want to refocus for customer success teams or customer support teams so that you can repurpose that all of that good information. And then finally, as a last step, start from scratch. So if none of the options are available to you, create content from scratch. But really, you want to try and repurpose, reformat, or expand upon pre-existing content that you already have available to reduce the amount of pressure that you find on yourselves as you're trying to start with this initiative. I'll leave this up for just a second if anyone does want to note that down or if anyone will see value from that. One of the big benefits of Thinkific Plus and Thinkific in general is our bulk importer. So I always try and advise customers not to start uploading content one by one, but instead to bulk import that content. So once you've determined all of the content that you'd like to include in your courses, whether it's repurposed or new content, then all you need to do is bulk upload all of those files, whether it's worksheets, PDFs, audio files, or anything like that. And the system will automatically create lessons for you. And then you can simply drag and drop all of that content into place so that you don't have to do all of the manual work in bringing that together. We also have course templates. So if you're unsure around how you want to structure your course, if you don't have too much experience with it, based on learning best practices and some of the things that we've seen in the industry, we've created a series of templates that will allow you not only to leverage those course templates to create courses, but also templates from a themes perspective to create your landing page, so you have a really attractive and brand consistent landing page. So very easy to get started, lots of blank content available, and you should be able to get going with a lot of the information that we put in there for you. We do have some general guidelines for producing lessons. We do get a lot of frequently asked questions similar to these, so I think it is worth noting these right now because the same questions come up again and again when it comes to learning management, so we wanted to give you a heads up on some of the answers there. One of the first questions that we often get is, how long should lessons be? How long should courses be? And really, there's no direct answer to that question. You may have a large body of content that employees absolutely have to digest. And if you can split that up over time, that's great. If you do need a hard number, we typically say a lesson should be 5 to 15 minutes typically. So trying to aim under 10 minutes, I think, is a good rule of thumb. We do see examples of companies where they have, a 1 hour long video that must be completed. And then after the fact, they'll ask us or ask themselves, why weren't people engaging with that video, or why weren't they completing it? And the reality is that getting someone to complete a 1 hour video in a course is a bit of an ambitious idea. So splitting things up into bite-sized content will really help you with that. Keep everything simple, clear, and to the point. Individuals are really looking for focused learning and all of the key information that they need to get out of it. More information does not equal more value. Similar to the point before, think about what your goal is exactly and drive towards that as quickly as feasibly possible. And guess what? You'll always recreate your lessons. I think done is better than perfect. Get your first iteration out there and then iterate upon that as much as possible. Ask for feedback, leverage the survey options and survey capabilities to actually provide insights into what's working really well from a learning perspective and what isn't. And remember that nothing's going to be perfect the first time you get it out there, but you will be able to iterate on that based on the analytics that you have at hand. Of course, if you are looking for Thinkific Plus, and if you are intending on going that route, you will have access to a customer success manager or an account manager. So lean on them from their consultative experience. They work with all of these companies that we've discussed with today, and they're very familiar with different ways of laying out learning systems and learning kind of pathways. So if you're struggling and you need support, you can always rely on that individual to provide advice. We do host a large number of lesson formats for online courses. The typical ones that we recommend are video, text and image, and audio. You can even record audio over PowerPoint presentations, which I think is a really cool feature. And I think trying to combine all of these three into interactive lessons where learning is done with interactivity interspaced with learning. So video contents and a quiz to assess the learnings from that video content is a great way to ensure that content's being digested properly and that students are thinking about it, understanding it, and learning it. That's a great way of interspacing all of your learning with different ways of engaging the individuals. And of course, now we're really excited to introduce Thinkific Live Lessons. So we're really pleased with our recent Zoom integration that's just been finalized. So you can now schedule Zoom meetings or webinars directly within the course builder to better engage your team and track their training progress. So if you do want to do live lessons, you can do that within Thinkific alongside all of your other content. If you have PDF content that you want to make downloadable after the live lesson, you can do that. If you want to break out into breakout rooms within the course builder, you can do that. So we're very excited about this. This has been a huge request from a large number of our customers because they want to blend digital learning with live learning to have that interspace throughout the experience. And I think that's a great way of ensuring that a student feels connected to who they're learning from. Just having video content, PDF content isn't always going to be enough. And feeling like you're connected with an individual, I believe, is a really great way to facilitate and kind of supplement the learning that you have. So we're really pleased to announce this live integration, and we think that a large number of our customers are going to see great value from that. And of course, finally, you do want to analyze results and continue to make improvements upon them. So continuously iterate on the progress that you're making, continuously review the survey results that you're getting, and make changes accordingly to make sure that you're continuously improving on that. So we do have the ability to export any reports, quiz scores, or how employees have interacted with your content. You can compare those reports with survey results and employee feedback. You can also measure completion rates against benchmark business goals. So you might say that we want an 80% completion rate across the board as a benchmark goal, but we only have 75%. So perhaps it means that there's something about the program that we've put together that isn't as engaging as we maybe thought it was. And of course, we want to synthesize all of that data and actually make changes to all of the content that we have to improve the overall experience for those learners. We've obviously covered a lot of topics today, and we don't have too much time left in the actual prescribed time that we've been given, but I wanted to give you a quick couple of takeaways just to summarize them for you, because there is a lot of content that we've covered today. I think investing in your employees brings about a positive ROI. Failing to do that, failing to improve the experience past week one will inevitably cost your company more money than you'll make. I think identifying skill gaps by actually discussing with your team members is a great way to get started with understanding what exactly it is that you need to develop from a learning management perspective to actually help your employees and improve their experience. Aligning training to your business goals is absolutely essential to ensure that you're actually doing something that's going to be measurably impactful for your business. And of course, you want to measure those results and make changes accordingly so that you're continuously iterating on the outcomes that you're trying to achieve. And finally, we do have an exclusive offer for anyone who is watching today. You can get started with Thinkific Plus for free with complimentary onboarding. We do have a specific link for anyone who is interested in that. What I will do is I'll post that into the chat now for anyone who is looking to take advantage. And with the time that we have left, I'm more than happy to take any questions in the chat if anyone does have them around any of the content that we've discussed today. Absolutely no problem if anyone doesn't have any questions. We'll take them from the chat if you do have them. But we do have 2 minutes left, so I'll leave myself available for the full 2 minutes. But for everyone else who doesn't have any questions, I want to thank you all for attending today. If you do have any further questions, go through the link. You'll be able to schedule a call with either myself or one of my colleagues to discuss options around Thinkific, how you might leverage that for any of your onboarding and training. If you do have any questions, we're always happy to take a call, even if it's not just Thinkific Plus and maybe for some of those smaller businesses and packages, we're always happy to talk with you about those as well. Jason, my pleasure. Thank you for attending. Really appreciate you being here. I'm glad you found it informative. Okay, well, with that being said, I think we'll wrap up the call for today. Again, thank you, everyone who attended. Thank you to the team at GameBreak for hosting us today. We really appreciate it. Do get in touch with us if you'd like to learn more, and we'll be happy to get in touch. Thanks very much, everyone.